it's going to be challenging. You're going to have to make some hard choices. For example, water versus Coca-Cola. That's probably one of the hardest daily choices. Like, man, I could really use a Coke, but I need the water, Same thing with school. I really want to play my video game, but I probably should read 30 minutes so I can work on my fluency, And so if we can get children to understand that doing those things that are challenging, that they enjoy, like playing, it'll translate to the much harder things in life.
Welcome to the Voices United in Education podcast. Each week, we showcase the teachers, administrators, and community members who go the extra mile to contribute to the success of every student in Escambia County. You'll meet the real people behind the titles and learn about the amazing resources to support every student's success. They say fitness is a lifelong journey. But why then do so many of us feel like we are just barely figuring it out in adulthood? Why couldn't we have started sooner? My next guest is helping Pensacola kids do just that. She's the CEO of Pensacola's first Black-owned youth fitness studio, Healthy Habits and Opportunities, better known as H2O. Today, the former Escambia County educator is going to share why fitness matters in and out of the classroom and what parents can do to set kids up for success. Teaching healthy habits, fortifying the mind and the body, Pine Forest grad, Dacia May. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You taught first grade at Ferry Pass.
Yes.
And were a behavior coach at Warrington. So I feel like you definitely have the scoop on kids and their behavior. How does poor fitness impact kids at school?
Oh, well, again, thanks for having me. Wow, poor fitness is unfortunately everywhere. Especially in adults. But like you said, it can start so soon. We can start correcting these behaviors so soon. But when I think about fitness, I think about success and goal setting, right?
Yeah, like mindset.
At its purest form, And so if we start out by saying, hey, Mom, I want to learn to ride my bike. You remember learning to ride your bike?
Oh, I totally remember. In fact, it was my parents owned a gym and I learned to ride inside the gym on the little ballet bars.
Right. So I'll just use this as an example. Do you remember how many times you fell before you were actually able to ride your bike?
Many times.
And it was so frustrating. But your mom, your dad, whoever was teaching you was right there the entire step of the way saying, it's okay, get up. It's okay, try this next time, right?
Right.
And each time you got up, you tried it. And eventually you were successful, right? That's the same correlation between fitness and school. So we learn to ride our bike. I feel like that's when we're learning those habits of it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. There are going to be challenging moments. I may do things right sometimes, things wrong sometimes, but ultimately I'm trying to reach my goal. And so if we teach kids that outside of the classroom, when they get inside of the classroom, when they're doing things that they may not naturally be comfortable at or things that others may be better at faster than them, they'll already have those skill sets to say, let's keep going, let's work harder. And so if one is poor, then unfortunately the other is probably going to be poor as well.
I could totally see that because fitness is not something, it's not a box that you check on a Wednesday afternoon, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. It's something that you do habitually every day. And the benefits are a little bit harder to measure in the beginning, right? At a lifetime of exercise, you can see it on a person and that person can feel it because maybe they have fewer aches and pains. But while they're waking up early to go to the gym or taking the stairs instead of the elevator, right, there's no immediate feedback of, oh yeah, look, mission accomplished. Like I just achieved this next level. And I could totally see how that would correlate with school because the habits of studying, the habits of being a good citizen in your classroom, they aren't immediately rewarded.
Right.
Like it's over time. It's compounding.
It's not always instantly gratifying. It's going to be challenging. You're going to have to make some hard choices. For example, water versus Coca-Cola. That's probably one of the hardest daily choices. Like, man, I could really use a Coke, but I need the water, Same thing with school. I really want to play my video game, but I probably should read 30 minutes so I can work on my fluency. And so if we can get children to understand that doing those things that are challenging, that they enjoy, like playing, it'll translate to the much harder things in life.
So you were in the classroom and now you're I was going to say out of the classroom, but you're actually in a different type of classroom
Right.
in a way. But having both of those perspectives, what do you suggest that parents do in order to help kids make that correlation? What's the best way that parents can support kids in having not just a fitness in their physical bodies, but what you're talking about, that mindset?
To be completely honest, is doing it with them. I have 2 little boys myself, and they completely drain me. But they are so much more willing to do it when I'm doing it with them. So the things that they don't want to do, when they see me do it and we're doing it together, then it becomes something that's enjoyable. Because think about it, we're at work 8 hours a day. And so, for example, my kids, we wake up every morning and we take a morning jog. It's no longer than about 200 meters, 100 meters down, 100 meters back. And they cry and they whine as they get out of bed to do it. But on the way back, they're smiling, they're running, they're like, okay, I'm ready to start my day. And so I think what's so important about that is I'm right there with them. I'm not rolling over saying, hey, go on your run. And they reluctantly take this walk. They don't run ever. And then they reluctantly come back and they come back in the house with an attitude. It's something that we do together. I listen to their emotions. I explain this is something that we need to do for our bodies. We're getting ourselves mentally prepared for the day. And I'm talking them through these things. And so when someone else who means something to them at some point, their teacher is who I mean, but when someone else begins to speak to them and say, hey, you need to try this. Hey, this is why we're doing this. I feel like they're able to accept those type of learning experience because I've already placed them in those positions to where they have to do things sometimes that they don't want to do.
But it's modeled. And that's so powerful. I like that. It's like every learning style. It's kinetic, it's audio, it's visual. And so it really sinks in. What do you think that people misunderstand the most when it comes to kids' fitness specifically?
Man, I don't think they feel as if it's a such thing, to be honest. I think you have 2 ends of the spectrum. You have your athletes, and then you have children that are obese. There's nothing in between. There is no fitness lifestyle for kids. Either we're working to go to the NFL, get a college scholarship, or, our doctor has diagnosed us with diabetes, or we're being bullied at school, and so we have to find a solution to this problem. Mm-hmm. If you have neither of those things going for you, then it's just like, there is nothing, You may play a recreational sport, but if you're not that great, then the sport is just a sport and we don't do anything outside of that, So unfortunately, I just don't think it's something that's thought of. And I get it. Again, as a mom, I work multiple jobs, I'm trying to make sure that everyone is fed, the bills are paid. But for me, it's really important to make sure that health and wellness is a part of their lifestyle.
Yeah, that it's ingrained. You're right. It's almost like the pleasure of that movement is missing. It's either for the college scholarship or it's, not happening at all. So you mentioned obesity, and I want to talk about the body positivity movement because I feel like it's helped a lot of kids of all body types feel good about themselves. However, it also has had a negative impact because it makes it hard to allow the conversation of physical fitness to enter the chat, right? So how do we allow physical fitness to enter the equation minus the shame?
So I think it has to be talked about more as a self-centered goal-setting type conversation and not as this is what it should be. Right. So we have to teach kids to think for themselves almost. What do you want for yourself? This is what you should have, but how do you want to get there? That conversation piece as far as, we have like a cancel culture, right? So anytime someone has a difficult conversation or points out something that is true, but not always pleasurable to hear, then we want to cancel that. And I think that's why a lot of those conversations are hard, is because we're so used to things being shed in a negative light, and we don't want to speak on it because we feel as if it's not coming from a good place.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of those conversations, we just have to state that in the very beginning. Unfortunately, I see a lot of times when parents are talking about or trying to have those hard conversations, they follow it up with, see, this is why you don't need that. So we've had a hard conversation, for example, about weight. Let's just say we're talking about a teenager here. And we're like, hey, we know we need to get physically active. We need to make some changes so that, unfortunately, a lot of time, we're doing it so that other people won't talk about us, right? We're not really talking about our health or our wellness. And if we are, after we have that tough conversation that sometimes is hard to receive if I haven't received that all of my life, and we follow it up with, oh, wow, I see that you're eating a cookie. See, this is why you shouldn't be doing that. Oh, I see that you're having a soda. See, this is why you are the way that you are. And so I think those habits, unfortunately, make having those conversations that much harder because sometimes we don't know really how to help make the change. And it's frustrating. And so then we start pointing out every negative thing. And so even though we had good intentions in the first conversation, the person receiving it now doesn't see it that way.
Because they don't have ownership. They're just trying to avoid criticism on the other end. Like in your example, they're getting bullied at school.
Right.
And then maybe a parent is trying to help them, but it just becomes at-home bullying a little bit.
It's a never-ending cycle. And because I don't have a real reason to be doing this other than for someone else, it's really hard to continuously want to do something that's already hard,
Yeah. So in your studio, when you have young people come in they have no athletic background,
Right.
like you're like, okay, we're going to make sure your hamstrings are nice and stretched. And they're like, excuse me, ma'am, where's my hamstring? Yeah, like say you got those kids and they're all so heavy, right? So they've got some aches in their body. And so doing the exercise itself is uncomfortable. What does that look like in your studio when you talk to those kids? How do you help them find their own inner reason for showing up?
That's a good question. So we don't even talk about body parts the very first day. It's almost just like a coffee date in a sense. Who are you? What do you like to do? What do you want to be? What's your guilty pleasure? What do you hate the most? What do you like the most? All of those things so that I can learn them. And so hopefully, let's say, for example, I have an athlete, because anyone who walks in my gym is now an athlete, right? Everyone wants to be an athlete. So let's just say they want to be a fireman. Okay, you want to be a fireman? So now I can take that, and any and everything that we do is now related to you reaching your goal of being a fireman. Okay, what's plan B if maybe I'm working with an older student? If I don't become a fireman, then, maybe I want to be an engineer. Okay, so you're walking around looking at the structures of buildings all day. Okay, you have to be physically fit to be up, walking around, looking at different structures of buildings, whatever it is that engineers do. So anyhow, what I'm saying is I try and take whatever they want and make now this journey personal for that. Not because their mom has come to me and said, hey, he's pre-diabetic. We really have to get this weight off. That does not drive a person. It may drive someone who's 45 and they want to live to 85, and they want to see their grandchildren. But someone who's 15, diabetes, they may not even really understand what that is. And so what I'm saying is we have a conversation and I really try to learn, what is it that you want to do in life? And guess what? Sometimes they don't even know. And so I then step in and say, all right, so let's set some goals. How many push-ups do you think I can do? And, sometimes they'll say 5, and that's very insulting. But I'm like, okay, well, let's see how many you can do. And they're like, well, I can't do 1. Okay, I've got a goal for you. By the end of this week, I want to see you do 1 push-up, And so now we've kind of built this relationship. I've made them laugh a little bit. I've given them coffee. Not really coffee, but
yeah.
We're sitting down on this little date and we're
You're
getting
connected.
to know each other. And now they're walking away with, man, I'm going to have to be able to do 1 push-up by the end of this week, right? And so there's this sense of excitement. Now, are they all excited? No. Some of them leave saying, wow, this lady's absolutely crazy. I'm not going to be able to do one push-up by the end of the week, but I know my mom is bringing me back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when they walk in the door, the next time they come back, I say, hey, what's up? You ready to learn how to do that push-up? And they're like, oh my gosh, she really brought me back, right? And so after a while, I'm the one that's like, man, I've had a really long day. And they're like, I'm ready to do that push-up, coach. And I'm like, let's do it, right? And so it just boils down to getting to know them and trying to create something that motivates them, you know.
I like that. So can a parent do that at some level, or can a parent do that in a way that supports what you're doing or what someone like you is doing in their kids' lives? Because I think it's sometimes easier for an outsider to come in, because you don't have that parent, the kid doesn't have that parent blindness, that parent deafness, right? Because you're an outsider and you're cool.
Right.
But how can a parent kind of tap into that other than the very important point you made at the beginning, which was modeling it?
Right.
So that might be a barrier, but let's set that to the side for a second. How could a parent engage their child in the way that you're engaging your clients?
So the happiest of kids, I don't want to say sad, but some kids, they just have this wall up to where they don't display emotion. Even those children, all children like challenges where they say it or they don't. And so I would say start with positive challenges. Challenge them in some way and start small. Let's not start with, okay, I challenge you to run 3 miles every day. That's probably not going to happen.
Right.
But just something that is realistic. Let's see if you can do 10 jumping jacks every morning when you wake up and every morning before you go to bed. And if you do, I'll take you to get ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is that they like. But then that also comes with knowing your child. And we won't go down the rabbit hole of knowing your child. But to be honest, sometimes I just sit down with my kids and I say, what's your favorite color? What football team do you like? And sometimes it changes. But it also gives you that bonding time. So 2 things. Kids really like spending time with their parents, and kids really like a challenge. So being realistic and positive with that challenge is so easy to do. Now, I understand that being a parent is super hard, and on the forefront of our brain sometimes is things that our child or children couldn't even imagine, right? But trying to find that space so that you truly can help them and encourage them in the most positive and challenging ways. It's super easy to do at home.
I kind of like that because there's no one path. There's no here's the 5 steps to get your kid, into the gym.
Absolutely not.
Because then you can't really do it wrong. I think it's almost pressure relieving for parents to go, you know what, do what you do best as a parent and do it with this end in mind and do it together.
Yep.
That is really cool.
Absolutely.
Off mic, you told me you wanted to talk about body type versus vitality. Tell me, why is that distinction important?
Well, so I think people think when they think of fitness, they only think of being one way.
Like body type wise, like the appearance?
You can only be, when you think of fitness, people typically think of a larger body type and they don't think of smaller body types and the mental capacity or the things that people go through in wanting to be on the other end of the spectrum. Because believe it or not, people who are smaller get picked on just as much as people that are big, And so I think that it's pretty important to understand. For example, off mic, we were talking about the play on words, right? A lot of people, even now as an adult, will tell me, wow, I haven't been your size since middle school. And of course, as an adult, that doesn't bother me. But there was a time to where I was like, well, that's not a compliment to me. You are a child and I'm an adult and now you're telling me I look like a child. But on the other end, if I had said, man, if I ever become your size, hey,
yeah.
Okay,
that would
send
work.
help fast, right? Everyone would be offended.
Right, yeah.
I may get fired. And so I think when we talk about body types, we just have to be aware that they come in all shapes and sizes. And some people can be happy at their size, and some people are not so happy at their size. So we just have to be cautious of how we speak to others.
Yeah, I like that. And I think speaking, you use that word vitality, that was your word. And I like it because vitality means life. So you're speaking life into other people and you're not just putting them in a box of you should look this way, or that it's not a backhanded compliment, but it's some sort of reverse Uno card insult
Right.
It doesn't feel good. So I want to talk about your time as an educator, because I think it's interesting what you do now, and that the fact that you put in the time as an educator in Escambia County. How, in your view, does your time as a teacher influence your time in the studio?
I loved my time as a teacher. My first grade kids were absolute best. Now, I did teach in Texas for a little while too, but I taught second grade. But again, it just goes back to kids wanting to be challenged. I challenge my kids all the time in classrooms academically, but I also challenge them physically at recess. I was that teacher that was running around playing soccer. I raced my kids, like we played freeze tag. We had relay races. And so just really understanding that they like being physically active. I like to call what I do gym therapy. And so kids can't always make it to the gym. But when they're playing and they're free from all of the emotions, struggles, things that we may not even know or understand that they're going through at home, when they're playing, that is their moment. That is their outlet. Unfortunately, some of our kids' parents, they can't afford for them to play extracurricular activities. So that time that they get to, mingle with their peers and play and things of that nature, it really is positive, not just for their physical health, but for their mental health. And so as a teacher, I was able to use that in the classroom, of course, as far as goal setting and being tenacious and having tenacity and all those things. But then in the studio, it's no different, really. So I do have what I call H2O athletics, and it's really a merge between the two. So we work on reading and language arts, but we do it in the physical fitness realm. We're playing basketball with blending sounds. We're playing freeze tag. I mean, just so many different physical activities, but it merges reading and language. So it's really not much of a difference, to be honest. We don't have that 8-hour academic piece.
Yeah. So how can people interact with your studio? How do they get their kid to involved or signed up? How can they try it out?
So, no one has to try out. So it's free game. Anybody can come and join. But in order to contact me and fill out a survey and have a consultation, I do have social media. I have Instagram, H2O Athletics. It's just H2O Athletics. And then I have Facebook, H2O Healthy Habits and Opportunities. That's what it is. So Instagram and Facebook, you can reach out either way. Now, once you send me a message, then it will send you an Acuity link. And through that Acuity link, you can actually schedule a consultation.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so I'll make sure to put both of the socials in the episode description so that parents will know how to get in touch with you. But before we sign off, how, if you were going to leave parents with a couple of tips for increasing their child's fitness, increasing maybe their family fitness, what are the top 2 things that you would say that they should do?
So, of course, you know my number one thing is do it together. You have to do it together and start small, because you may not have a lot of time to do it together. But like I said, every morning, me and my boys, 200 meters. I mean, it takes maybe 4 minutes out of my morning, and I plan to have those 4 minutes. I get up before them and prepare for the 4 minutes of crying. And then we take our 4 minutes. So make sure you're doing it together. My second takeaway would be to stay positive. I know as parents, life has a way of boggling us down in so many shapes and forms, whether it be work, whether it be relationships, so many different things. But staying positive with your children, especially in the aspect of health, wellness, and fitness, it can be hard. It really can be hard because, again, sometimes mentally we just have so much on our plate. But reminding yourself to only associate health and wellness with positive things is going to change the trajectory of how your child thinks about health and wellness themselves.
I love that. Attitude and togetherness. Those are great tips. Thank you so much for sharing this. I am so glad that you're doing what you're doing. It's really important.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share. Voices United in Education is a production of Escambia County Public Schools.